What if I told you there's an entire side to Jesus that most of the world has never heard about? A side filled with hidden journeys, esoteric teachings, and spiritual insights that threaten to overthrow centuries of established dogma. You might think you already know the story of Jesus, the miracles, the crucifixion, the resurrection. But what if I said that the real story, the deeper truth, goes so much further than the narrative you grew up with? Today, I'm going to take you on a journey into the lost wisdom of Jesus Christ. These aren't ideas found in your typical Sunday sermon. They're the secret teachings that some say were reserved for those who were ready, a spiritual elite who had the ears to hear. And right now, those ears belong to you. We know about the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem, the flight to Egypt, and then a brief snapshot of him at age 12, discussing theology with temple teachers. But after that, silence. From age 12 to about age 30, the official biblical record goes dark. That's nearly 2 decades of unexplained history. Why would the Bible, so meticulous in other areas, skip over the prime years of Jesus' life? Some mainstream explanations suggest he simply stayed home in Nazareth, living a humble life as a carpenter. But rumors and ancient accounts hint at something far more intriguing. Jesus traveling east, studying in Egypt, Persia, even India. In India, it's said he could have encountered yogic traditions, specifically techniques resembling Kriya Yoga, methods designed to awaken one's inner spiritual energy. Others claim he went to Tibet, where he could have learned about non-violence and compassion from Buddhist monks. If these stories are true, Jesus would have returned to Palestine armed with a deeper universal message, one that transcended the boundaries of any single religious tradition. But let's push it further. Does any of this alleged travel explain why Jesus' message shook the foundations of Jewish religious society at the time? Could these so-called lost teachings be the real reason so many people in power felt threatened? Because if Jesus picked up revolutionary ideas from other cultures, ideas about oneness, inner enlightenment, breathwork, and harnessing divine energy, he would have introduced concepts that were radical enough to disrupt not just the Jewish leadership, but eventually the entire Roman Empire. And if that's the case, we need to ask, why would later church leaders minimize or dismiss these influences? One of the most famous yet misunderstood phrases of Jesus is this: "The kingdom of God is within you." On the surface, many churches interpret this as poetic language, that God's presence is near us, guiding us in our hearts. But if we read it as an esoteric message, it suggests something far more empowering and potentially destabilizing to any religious institution dependent on external authority structures. Jesus could be saying that the path to enlightenment, to true divinity, doesn't lie in rituals, temples, or even blind adherence to religious laws. Instead, it's an inward journey. If the kingdom is inside you, then you become the temple, the altar, and even the priest of your own spiritual experience. No wonder the Pharisees and Sadducees, the religious leaders of his day, found him so subversive. And no wonder certain sects of early Christianity, or later church authorities, decided to emphasize obedience to an external church rather than celebrating a direct inward spiritual communion. When we consider Luke 17:21 in the broader context of mystical traditions worldwide, it echoes teachings in Hinduism about the Atman, the true self, Buddhism about the Buddha nature, and Taoism about the Tao residing in every living being. Could it be that Jesus was tapping into the same universal wellspring of wisdom that these other traditions had been exploring for centuries? It's a question that could reframe the entire idea of Christianity. Instead of seeing it as a standalone religion with rigid boundaries, we might recognize it as part of a global tapestry of spiritual teachings, all pointing inward for salvation, rather than outward to institutions or hierarchies. And that leads us to our next clue. Jesus' explicit statement of unity with the divine, on the surface, I and the Father are one, might just sound like Jesus declaring his divinity. Traditional Christian teaching often interprets this to mean he was uniquely the Son of God. But consider a more esoteric reading. In many Eastern philosophies, especially in non-dual traditions, statements about oneness with the divine are not reserved for a single avatar or prophet. Such statements are a universal truth accessible to all beings once they shed their ego and recognize their innate unity with the source. Imagine if Jesus was demonstrating that any person could ultimately claim, I and the Father are one, not by arrogance, but by dissolving their small self into the larger reality of God. This matches the concept of non-duality in Hinduism, Advaita Vedanta, where the highest realization is to see no difference between the individual soul, Atman, and the supreme universal spirit, Brahman. Of course, telling people they can become one with God, bypassing the religious gatekeepers, would have been revolutionary, if not outright dangerous. It's easy to see how centuries of interpretation might tweak that message into something narrower, that only Jesus held this unity. Yet a careful reading of the Gospels shows Jesus emphasizing that his followers could do the works he did, and even greater. That's a staggering promise, one that implies the spark of divinity isn't exclusive to a single individual. It's a spark we might all carry. And if that doesn't open your eyes, let's look at one of the strangest verses in the Bible, often skimmed over or dismissed. If thine eye be single, Matthew 6:22 states, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. On a superficial level, one might interpret this as a moral teaching, telling believers to maintain a pure perspective. But in mystical traditions worldwide, the notion of a single eye goes much deeper, aligning with the concept of the third eye, often referred to in yogic and Buddhist practices as the Ajna chakra, located between the eyebrows. Esoteric Christianity posits that Jesus was referencing the opening of the spiritual eye, the inner vision that perceives the divine reality hidden behind the illusions of the physical world. When this eye opens, the individual no longer operates solely in the realm of five-sense perception, but gains insight into spiritual truths that can't be captured by ordinary sight. If we read the verse in that light, Jesus was essentially instructing his followers in a form of advanced spiritual practice that parallels Eastern methods of meditation and breath control. Think about what this implies. Jesus might have been teaching, and indeed demonstrating, techniques akin to modern-day meditation, possibly even breathwork that fosters heightened states of consciousness. Why don't we hear this in the average sermon? Perhaps because such an interpretation dissolves the boundary that many religious institutions place between a special holy man and everyday worshippers. If you can open the same inner eye that Jesus spoke about, then what's stopping you from achieving a direct experience of the divine? But as radical as this sounds, Jesus' instructions may have been shared most openly, not with the public at large, but with an inner circle of disciples. One disciple in particular who has been the subject of endless controversy, Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is often misunderstood in mainstream tradition, sometimes depicted as a repentant sinner, other times just a marginal figure, overshadowed by the 12 apostles. She's rarely portrayed as a key spiritual leader. Yet, in the Gnostic texts, writings like the Gospel of Mary, she emerges not only as a disciple, but as one of the closest confidants of Jesus, receiving higher teachings that the others either didn't comprehend or weren't ready to accept. Why omit or marginalize these teachings? The Gospel of Mary suggests that Mary was the one who truly understood the depth of Jesus' message, often speaking confidently about inner visions and revelations she had directly received. Some passages even show other apostles growing jealous or confused at the knowledge she possessed. If Mary Magdalene was indeed entrusted with advanced mystic knowledge, that would drastically reshape how we view early Christian communities. Instead of a strictly hierarchical structure with only male apostles, we might see a more egalitarian or esoteric community where both men and women had access to the highest spiritual truths that revolve around self-knowledge, inner ascension, and direct union with God. In esoteric circles, Mary Magdalene often represents the divine feminine counterpart to Jesus. This feminine aspect of divinity has been suppressed or downplayed for centuries in many monotheistic traditions. But if the suppression of Mary Magdalene's role is tied to the suppression of these deeper teachings, then it's no wonder we've largely lost track of the universal consciousness-raising practices that Jesus may have originally imparted. In modern times, new attention on these Gnostic writings is causing many to revisit the question: did Jesus and Mary Magdalene share a secret knowledge about spiritual transformation? And if so, where did Jesus learn these deeper elements in the first place? While there's no explicit mention in the Bible of Jesus traveling east to learn with Himalayan mystics or Egyptian mystery schools, legends persist in multiple regions, especially in India, where documents allegedly record the presence of a saint named Asa, believed by some to be Jesus. According to these accounts, he studied yogic practices, learning how breathwork and meditation can harmonize body, mind, and spirit. One of the central aims of yoga, particularly Kriya Yoga, is the awakening of Kundalini, a dormant spiritual energy said to lie coiled at the base of the spine. When awakened, this energy travels upward through spiritual centers or chakras, culminating in profound states of consciousness. Could Jesus have encountered such practices and woven them into his teaching? If so, it would explain the high emphasis he placed on being born again, which in an esoteric sense may refer to the radical inner transformation that occurs when this divine energy rises within a person. Imagine the implications if the miracles and deep insights of Jesus were partly due to his mastery of meditative and energetic techniques, then the supernatural might just be supernatural, an advanced understanding of the capacities innate to all human beings. This possibility reframes Jesus from an otherworldly figure to a pioneering spiritual master who realized the full potential of the human condition. And that, in turn, challenges traditional teachings that place Jesus on a pedestal unattainable by ordinary people. If he was giving us a roadmap, the way, the truth, and the life, maybe that way includes spiritual exercises that are far more universal than we've been led to believe. But that's not where this ends. The puzzle pieces fit together into one overarching theme, a theme that unites every single one of these secret teachings, the awakening of what many call the Christ consciousness. What exactly is Christ consciousness? In mainstream Christianity, the term Christ is inseparable from the historical figure Jesus of Nazareth. However, esoteric traditions teach that Christ is not a last name. Rather, it's a title denoting a state of illumined awareness or union with God. When Jesus says, "I and the Father are one," he's speaking from that state of realized oneness, a consciousness in which the false boundary between human and divine dissolves. If that's the case, then the entire mission of Jesus could be interpreted as an invitation for humanity to awaken to this same level of consciousness. Consider John 14:12, where he tells his disciples, "Whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these." That statement becomes astonishing when taken literally. We are being told that the same power to heal, to love unconditionally, to transcend normal limits, exists in each of us, waiting to be activated. The Christ consciousness is the universal potential for divine unity. It's what Buddhists might call enlightenment, or what Hindus might call self-realization. This is the missing key to so many of Jesus' parables and instructions. It's not about believing in a distant God, or merely following dogmatic rules. It's about unveiling that divine spark within yourself, seeing God not as a bearded figure in the sky, but as the very essence of your being. It's a life-altering perspective, one that places responsibility for spiritual growth directly in your hands. No wonder it was so threatening to religious hierarchies, both ancient and modern. If you realize the divine dwells within you, you don't need an intermediary to access that sacred reality. For centuries, the Gospel of Thomas and other Gnostic writings were hidden or dismissed as heretical. Yet these texts offer a lens into a type of Christianity more aligned with internal revelation than external authority. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus emphasizes self-knowledge as the route to salvation, famously stating, "When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are children of the living Father." No mention of dogmatic creeds, no mention of elaborate rituals or needing to wait for the afterlife. Instead, the text points us inward. This aligns perfectly with Eastern mysticism, where the spiritual quest is about understanding the nature of one's own consciousness. Reading these Gnostic texts side by side with canonical Gospels, you can see how they provide an expanded spiritual dimension that conventional Christianity has often sidelined or dismissed entirely. Could it be that the earliest Christians had a more mystical, individualized approach to their faith, and that only later did institutional structures trim away the more radical or esoteric aspects to maintain unity, control, and clear doctrinal boundaries? The debate continues, but one thing is certain: these texts reveal a Jesus who saw the spiritual path as a direct, personal journey into the depths of the soul. You might wonder, why does any of this matter in the 21st century? Isn't it enough to follow the moral teachings of Jesus? Love thy neighbor, forgive others, be charitable. Those teachings are obviously invaluable. But if Jesus really came to spark an inner revolution, then ignoring or dismissing his deeper insights could be like only reading half the instructions to a life-changing device. We'd be missing out on the full transformational power of his message. In a world where people are increasingly searching for spiritual depth over mere religious form, these secret teachings offer a roadmap that blends seamlessly with modern explorations of consciousness, meditation, and holistic well-being. It suggests that salvation isn't just about securing a place in heaven after death. It's about awakening to your divine potential here and now. And that awakening can ripple outwards, fostering greater compassion, understanding, and unity in a very tangible way. Moreover, in a time marked by deep divisions, religious, cultural, political, imagine the unifying force of recognizing that all sincere spiritual paths aim to awaken the same divine core within. Far from threatening one's faith in Jesus, this perspective can deepen it, showcasing him as a universal teacher with a message relevant to all humanity, transcending time and culture. So where does this leave you? Maybe you've just discovered that the Jesus you grew up hearing about at church was only half the story. Maybe you've always sensed there was more, some missing piece that got lost between the lines of scripture and the centuries of formal doctrine. Or perhaps this is the first time you're hearing such ideas, and it's leaving you wide-eyed, full of questions, maybe even a little uncomfortable. And that's exactly where the journey begins, at the threshold of curiosity and wonder. Because the lost wisdom of Jesus isn't meant to be locked away in dusty texts or controlled by a select few. It's meant to be experienced, lived, and shared. The call is for you to look within, open your heart, and explore practices that lead to inner transformation, whether that's meditation, prayer, or simply questioning your assumptions. Remember, the kingdom of God is within you, not in some remote heaven waiting for you after death. I invite you to share in the comments which of these secret teachings struck you the most. The idea that Jesus traveled east, the notion that Mary Magdalene might have been his most advanced disciple, the provocative suggestion that I and the Father are one applies to everyone, not just Jesus. Let's talk about it, debate it, and learn from each other's perspectives. And if you want more videos that dive fearlessly into hidden histories, untold truths, and mind-expanding insights, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a thumbs up if it made you reconsider what you thought you knew. Because trust me, this is just the beginning. We have so many more layers to peel back, so many more mysteries to unravel. For centuries, entire institutions have profited from the idea that there's only one gatekeeper between you and God. But these lost teachings suggest something radically different. You already hold the key, locked within your own heart and mind. All it takes is the courage to open that door and step into the light of your own divine potential. And once you walk through that door, there's no going back. The world will never look the same, because you'll be seeing it with new eyes. A single eye perhaps, one full of light. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the lost wisdom of Jesus. Till next time, stay curious, stay open, and above all, stay ready. Because the greatest secret might just be that you carry the kingdom within yourself, waiting to be discovered.